Saudi Arabia, the top oil producer in the world, is apparently seeking to join BRICS, not BRICS, which stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the 5 biggest rising economies in the world. China and Russia are developing ideas for a global reserve currency. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, made the announcement regarding the reserve currency as part of OPEC's plan to downsize. The Saudis are reducing their oil output. President Biden is urged by Senate Democrats to sever ties with Saudi Arabia, the pledge of President Biden to penalize Saudi Arabia. Even the West's closest allies are turning against it, including Saudi Arabia, which now wants to join the BRICS. One of the most powerful nations in the world, Saudi Arabia is also the U.S.'s closest friend and has been for the most of its history. However, Saudi Arabia and the same United States are currently at war. While Saudi Arabia reduced its oil output by 2 million barrels, which worsened American inflation, Biden warned Saudi Arabia with undefined repercussions and even suggested passing a small law to undermine Saudi Arabia's own security. Mohammed bin Salman made a significant step in response to the Saudi prince, asking to join China, India, and Russia in the BRICS alliance. This proposal sent shivers down the spine of the United States of America. Putin also mentioned the establishment of a new global currency, even though BRICS money and China, Russia, and India all stand to gain greatly from this. Let's go further into this situation today and try to determine the precise goals of the BRICS coalition. How will the Saudi Arabia's inclusion in the BRICS alliance alter the nature of global power? Putin, what do you think of the BRICS currency? What are the goals of the study, most importantly? To assist you in comprehending this important geopolitical scenario, don't. Calling it matters has got you this particular one. Let's therefore start from the beginning and attempt to comprehend what the BRICS alliance is and what is so remarkable about it that Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Argentina are also eager to join it. The abbreviation BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And just like the G7, which consists of the United States, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom, the 5 biggest rising economies in the world are forming an alliance. And because BRICS includes more emerging markets than the G7's wealthy economies, it is generally underappreciated. But as you'll see, these 5 nations account for 41 of the world's population together, and their combined BIP is worth an additional $24.4 trillion. Additionally, they have a considerable military capability and growing political clout on a worldwide scale. And by banding together, this group asserts its own voice on a worldwide scale, in aiding us. How come? Every time the West creates policies that are advantageous particularly for itself, as is the case with the carbon price, it raises concerns for other emerging countries. Because nature cannot continue to pay this price, carbon must have a price. The concept of a carbon border tax is becoming more popular in the US and the U-water charge on carbon to level the playing field for European goods. If other nations do not go as far as we have, they will refuse to move forward. Due to their lax environmental regulations and reduced production costs, nations like China and India are not locations that Western nations want their businesses to relocate. Now, you guys should know that the European nations frequently complain about the high carbon emissions caused by the Chinese and Indian steel industries. Because the auto sector is moving towards sustainable energy, they do not intend to implement a carbon tax. Therefore, our products will face a challenge when Chinese and Indian steel enter the global market in 2030, precisely because we produce more carbon dioxide than these industrialized nations. But this graph makes their dishonesty glaringly obvious. You can see from this graph that the industrialized nations have contributed significantly to climate change by emitting so much carbon during their development. But even then, they fail to remember the past, and now they are taxing us for carbon while our economy is in critical need of fuel to expand. Then we have the new development bank, which is identical to the Asian Development Bank, and the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank will be in charge of dispersing low-interest loans for each nation's development. Start constructing. Actually, this new development bank will benefit you as well. Finally, and most clearly, there is also interaction between the military and the economy. The BRICS partnership is significant for this reason. If you understand this very clearly, then let's try to figure out why Saudi Arabia wants to join the BRICS alliance. This tweet was initiated as soon as the conflict between Russia and Ukraine erupted. And as we initially saw, the price of oil soared. After reaching its high, the price of oil began to decline gradually. Then the price of oil fell to levels lower than those before the war. And it was at this point that the European and Saudi nations began to worry that the recession would further drive down the price of oil. Because decisions are made, the price of oil falls to extremely low levels. So they made the decision to reduce their output by 2 million barrels per day in order to enhance their earnings. Oil's price soared from $91 per barrel to $91 per barrel as a result. And as we saw on one side, while this action was very advantageous for the OPEC, it caused chaos in the West and prompted threats of repercussions, which led to the passage of a law to ban the trade in weapons. What is going on? Infringing on its end of the petrodollar deal is the US. Saudi Arabia is essentially warning everyone that we will tamper with your currency if you threaten to undermine our security. More crucially, if you examine the statistics over the previous 3 years, you will notice that Saudi Arabia has already begun to negotiate defense deals with both China and Russia in order to reduce their reliance on the US. Second, the Biden administration wants to relax the economic sanctions against Iran, as we saw in the last episode. Who in the Middle East is Saudi Arabia's foe? The third cause is related to BRICS' high oil consumption. China, Brazil, and India, the 3 BRICS nations, are the world's top oil users. Saudi Arabia will therefore enjoy the support of the largest oil consumers in the world if they join BRICS. These are the justifications behind Saudi Arabia's desire to join the BRICS group. What would happen if Saudi Arabia enters BRICS is the most crucial issue of all, which is brought up by this. The US economy will be at its lowest point, therefore that will be the first thing to happen. The winter catastrophe will result from a surge in US bank interest. What connection does Saudi Arabia's entry into BRICS have to US bank interest rates? One wonders. You may recall from our episode on Russia and China that it will put an end to the practice of petrodollar recycling. Since the majority of oil can only be purchased in dollars, there is a very, very simple explanation for those who are unaware of the situation. All of the nations keep their dollars in US banks, and since they all trade oil for dollars, they either invest the extra money in the US economy or use it for other trade-related activities. For instance, India has $532.86, $8 billion in reserves, despite having only $174 billion in trade debt with the United States this year, with the remaining $357 billion, $200 billion could be used for international trade. The remainder is $57 billion. India could use those funds to purchase U.S. Treasury bonds to contribute to the American economy. And with that, all the nations of the world have invested their excess foreign exchange reserves in the American economy. The total value of this money is $7.5 trillion US dollars. And the American banks use this money to lend to American companies at extremely low interest rates. Subscribe to this channel to watch all the newest news, one of the first.